Thanks, everyone here for attending the DeSouza Award. So this is on behalf of NSF Unidata Users Committee. We're happy to present the 2025 Russell L. DeSouza Award to Brian Blaylock of the United States Naval Research Laboratory. We want to recognize Brian's efforts to make system science data more easily available to the community, specifically two initiatives that have opened up both data and software in new ways. First was his work to begin an archive of the high-resolution rapid refresh model forecast at the University of Utah. And the HER is arguably the best model in the world at convective scale modeling, and yet prior to Brian's efforts, there was no archive of the outputs from his research. So thank you for that as a fellow spiritual person. This project has enabled researchers and educators to access HER outputs and led to a ZAR-based archive of the output, which has now been carried on by others and has eventually moved into the AWS cloud. The other is the development of the open source Herbie Python package for accessing numerical weather prediction model outputs. And Herbie is incredibly user-friendly and simple, such that it makes accessing and defeat model outputs really easy. Thank you for that. Overall, Brian's development of these tools has really reduced the time to science and meteorology, which is exactly in the spirit of the NSF Unidata's mission and of the DeSouza Award. So in recognition of his efforts this year, DeSouza Award plaque has the following text: show off Santa. For your dedication, enthusiasm, and inspiration that truly reflect the goals and ideals of the NSF Unidata program, we present Brian Blaylock with the 2025 Russell L. DeSouza Award. You exemplify these ideals through your ongoing efforts to make numerical weather prediction model output more easily accessible to the Earth System Sciences community. Your work at the University of Utah to create an archive of high-resolution rapid refresh model output for use in research and education has led to the creation of publicly available archives hosted on commercial cloud computing services. Similarly, your development of the open source Herbie package has made accessing numerical weather prediction model output really easy. We offer this award in recognition of and appreciation of for your efforts and service to the Earth System Science community at large. So please join me in congratulating Brian on behalf of our entire NSF community.
So I think the proper thing when you give some awards is not make him give a talk. But it really is truly an honor to be with you today and being invited by Unidata to talk with you. And it's really meaningful to receive an award that honors a man who was involved in all of this as well, to share data, share technology, and build those tools for enhancing the development of the students. That's something that I'm benefited through myself. I never knew Russ. Probably some of you were able to know him, but I know that his influence has shaped Unidata, shaped the Earth Sciences community, and I've been fortunate enough to have mentors a lot like Russ in my own life that have shaped me, and I'm really grateful for those kind of people. And everyone here in the room, I consider everyone here friends and colleagues in science, and just wanted to start off by saying thanks to you and everything that you guys are doing, because this is really this spirit of open and collaborative work with the community really builds us. And I believe the future in earth sciences is really bright because it's filled with people like yourselves, like Russ, and like all those good people that are doing things to advance this great work. And I'm really honored to be a part of this. I really enjoy going to work every day and being able to interact with people like you. So when I was first thinking about what I was going to talk to you today, this image kept coming into my head of a pole leaping over a bar. And I wasn't involved in the sport at all. I definitely know authority on the subject, but I did read some things about on Wikipedia last week that I think that I want to share with you. So this is the extent I have pole vaulting knowledge, but the world record pole vault was first recorded in 1849. The record is just 10 feet. And by 1900, it was almost 12 feet. 50 years later, it was 15 feet. And then by the year 2000, athletes were clearing 20 feet. That's twice as high as the original pole vault record recorded over 100 years earlier than that. And it just keeps going from there. Just last week, Armand Duplantis, I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, but he's competing for Sweden. He just broke the record for his 14th time, and he cleared 20 feet 8 inches. Now, I don't know if there's any other pole vaulting enthusiasts in here, but you don't have to be one to know that this is an incredible achievement that this has been done. Again, I don't know much about pole vaulting, but I do like making and looking at graphs. And when you look at a graph like this, you have to ask, what are the changes in the sport that have made these new heights possible? Clearly, there's been some breakthroughs. And one of the big changes was the invention of the fiberglass pole in the 1960s, and that launched a whole new era of pole vaulting. And I would also guess that there's other factors too, there's more people involved in the sport, and with that has brought more talent and better coaching and better training for it. So, and I also think it's striking here that the people breaking these world records in pole vaulting are young people like Armand, who's just 25 years old. And also, by the colors, you can see that these are people from all over the world too. So there's a lot of people involved in this. So I hope you can kind of see where I'm going, but we see the same upward trends and advancements in weather prediction and in earth sciences. This is just one example. This is a familiar graphic from, this paper is now 10 years old, but it's from the quiet revolution of numerical weather prediction. And like pole vaulting, there's been many factors that have, and many breakthroughs that have led to these new world records in forecasting and in earth science capabilities, and they just keep coming. So I wanted to title this talk with this analogy in mind. I've titled it Raising the Bar in Earth Sciences Through Education, Tools, and Training. And I really believe, I think that's why everybody is here, you share this belief that with the right tools and the right training, that the kind of support that Unidata provides and you provide through universities, that this helps our community keep raising that bar. It keeps getting higher and higher because of these efforts. So there's been a lot of breakthroughs in atmospheric science, and we couldn't cover them all here, and I'm not going to do that because we go to conferences that are week-long and to talk about those breakthroughs. But I wanted to focus on some breakthroughs that have been important for me in my education and the things that I've been doing and things that I like working on. So I'll talk a little bit about the origin of Herbie and some other few recent advances that I'm excited about. But first I want to tell you who I am. My interest in weather kind of follows that classic story that maybe 80% of other people have, but I really liked the weather growing up. As a little boy, I liked playing in the snow. I liked watching the seasons change. And back in the day, the snow was up above my head, and really it was like, when I was 3. So above my head was snow this high. So anyway, so that just really got me interested in it. It was just something I loved. But there was one event in 1999 that really drew me in, and it was a tornado that hit Salt Lake City, Utah. And I remember playing outside as a kid. It was a windy day, but when I went inside, I heard from my mom, it was like, oh, there's a tornado up in Salt Lake. And this was just an hour north of where I grew up. And I got sucked in. I was watching the news and watching the meteorologist replay the same video over and over again of this tornado that was captured from a camera at the University of Utah. And 12 years later, that's exactly where I ended up, in Salt Lake City at the University of Utah studying atmospheric science. And fortunately, there have been no more tornadoes in Salt Lake City since then. But so it was really that was kind of the origin for my interest in the weather. And when my very first semester at the Department of Atmospheric Sciences at the University of Utah, they were involved in some lake effect study. And Jim Steenberg, he had arranged to borrow the Doppler on wheels. And one day when I was walking to class, I saw it parked out in front of our building. And I just remember looking at it like this massive machine. I was like, wow, what does that do? And this is for studying weather? This is amazing. I didn't know that meteorologists did things like this. And so I walked up to it, and there were some grad students that were talking about how it worked, and Jim was there too. And I said, oh yeah, I'm an atmospheric science major. He said, give me a thumbs up. He's like, that's great. Glad to have you. And anyways, this just really made me, I remember the feeling of feeling so excited about being an atmospheric science major. So I got involved more in some field campaigns, and later participated in the Matterhorn field campaign, took observations, and you'll never forget the first weather balloon you launch, right? It's really a turning point for any atmospheric science student. And glad I got a picture of my first balloon that I filled and I launched by myself. So later that summer, I also was lucky enough to have an internship and got to fly on NASA's DC-8 aircraft. And Sean, you're either in this picture on the ramp or you're taking the picture. So this is where I met Sean, and that was one of the good things of that summer. But one of the other valuable things I gained from that summer was learning some new tooling that would benefit my future. I learned how to use Python. I went in saying, I am going to learn how to use this programming language, and I'm going to do all the stuff in Python. I think, Sean, you had the same attitude too. You and me were like the Python people in our little group of 5 or 6 people. But so that was really a valuable skill to pick up, and still a valuable skill for students to learn now. So these research opportunities, I just want to make clear that these are things that you provide your students that really, for them, raise the bar for each of them individually. And it also raises the bar for the community as a whole, because now you're getting new people into it as well. And you can advance that science in these unique ways by bringing in new blood. And remember, it's the young people that are going to be breaking those records and doing those new exciting things. So I stayed at the University of Utah for a graduate study. I really liked being there, and it was close to home as well. And as a graduate student, I joined John Horrell's research group. And his mentorship, along with working with the whole MesoWest team up there, it completely shaped the way that I approached research. John taught us how, about this cycle of collecting data, archiving it, and then building tools to access and analyze it. And then most importantly, making those tools available to everybody, and not just for yourself. You don't want to gatekeep this, because it's not only important to you, it's important to other people. And so that was really a powerful recipe that he taught all of his students. And it was really fun to see that it wasn't just weather geeks using this, but these things that we were doing. We were collaborating with people all across campus. We were working with people in biology and chemistry, computer science, and engineering to do things with our weather data we were collecting. We even had like race car drivers from the Bonneville Salt Flats that would call us up and ask us about our data, because we had a weather station out in remote areas of the Salt Flats that they liked to look at, and we had a camera and you could see the conditions out there. So it was always fun to engage with the community and see what they're actually using this for. And I would say that everyone in John's group would say that his mentorship, teaching us this pattern of getting data and sharing it and building out those tools for it, really raised the bar for us as scientists in all the different paths that we've gone and taken. So I was part of my graduate studies. I was part of the Great Salt Lake Summer Ozone Study in 2015. This was a small team we were really wanting to explore some of the physical processes that influence ozone in the Salt Lake Valley. And it's really hard to believe this happened 10 years ago now. Time just kind of marches on. But at the time of this study, a brand new 3-kilometer model called the High Resolution Rapid Refresh Model had been running operationally for less than a year. And John had the foresight of wanting to compare our observations we were going to collect for this field study with this new model that had come out. And I benefited from that archive, because after all the field study ended, part of my research was running WRF simulations of a lake breeze and seeing the impact of movement of pollutants in the valley interacting with that lake breeze. That's what this graphic is. It's a lake breeze front moving through Salt Lake, pushing ozone and all that. And I came to this room right here to learn WRF, and I came to the WRF user tutorial and learned that. And when I went back, I was like, hey, we got this HER archive, and well, let's initialize WRF with the HER model. And I believe I was the first one to initialize WRF with HER initial conditions to run this 1 kilometer WRF simulation. And I was like, well, let me just, I had taken a class in like web development too as an elective, and I was like, I know how to write a web page. I'll just make a little web page and put up the V table I used and some instruction on what I did to do that. And then people used it, and now there's a lot of people that have done this and initialized WRF with these HER boundary conditions. And so that was just trying something new is another example of raising the bar in the community. We were trying different new things during this work, and I'm glad I did it, because little did I know, I'd spend the next few years, I spent a lot of time with the HER data sets. As was introduced, we were archiving the HER at our university, and we realized that they had a lot of potential to do a lot more science with it than just studying ozone in the valley, like it was originally archived for. So we kept it going, and I was tasked to keep this archive going and to expand it. We had just been archiving analysis fields, but we're like, hey, let's archive some pressure fields too, and let's archive some of the forecasts. And we learned pretty quickly like why nobody else was doing this, because the HER data is quite dense, it's big, and it took up a lot of space. And we're like, gosh, if we're going to keep this going, like, how are we going to even do this? And fortunately for us, there's a guy at the Utah Center for High Performance Computing. His name was Sam Liston. He had just built a local S3 archive system on our campus, and he named it Pando. It's here in the middle. It's the illustrated there. It's the Pando archive, and it's named after a colony of trees in Utah that is the largest organism in the world. And it was a very fitting name for an archive that would grow very large over time. And so we were the very first to use this Pando archive that he had built. And we were just throwing all of our HER data up there, and it was growing quite quick. But as we know now, like S3 is a great way to archive data and access it. And so in the spirit of MesoWest, we were like, well, let's throw this up there and let's make it available to everybody. And so I started writing some Python scripts and tools to access data from that archive. And again, I had this website where I was publishing just little things that I was working on, and put up some scripts, and it's like, hey, this is how you can access data from this archive. And now, like I learned an important lesson here is that when you put something on the internet, people find it, and they find it fast. And so we started seeing a lot of people, they're like, hey, I'm going to use this because I can't get anybody anywhere else. From Nomads, they only have the HER data for like, a day or two before it goes away, and because it's big, and who wants to hang on to it for too long? But so I had put on my webpage a little form that asked people, I was like, hey, if you download from this, how about you just give me an email and tell me what you're using it for? And because we didn't really have any good download statistics, we didn't know who was using it. But by the time I graduated, there were about 500 people that had told me, through this little form that I had, that they had used the archive. And it was people from all over. And most importantly, I think, it was used by a lot of graduate students that were involved in research, just like myself. And so being able to share data, I learned firsthand how that raised the bar for me by having this knowledge and skill set to be able to serve data to people, but by giving something to somebody that was useful for them too. So this was a good idea, but it definitely wasn't an original idea. NOAA was doing the same thing, and we were kind of following some of their lead too. Like they're doing this important work of trying to make their data that they've got archived and trying to make it more accessible. And so you probably have seen this paper from NOAA describing their big data program. They started with the NextRad data set, put it up on Amazon S3, and invited anybody to use it and see what they could do with it. And immediately, within the first few years, they saw a huge success. That the rate of usage for this data that had been collected was just, it just exploded, and it has since then. So the big data program was a huge success, and and evolved into today's open data dissemination program. And I don't know how accurate or up to date this statistic is, but on their website, they list that they have over 150 NOAA data sets that are now available through various cloud providers through this program, including the full archive of the HER data set that we weren't able to do ourselves. And so we're really glad that we were able to demonstrate the utility and the need for it, and so that programs like this could pick them up and really serve this data. And this is another example of raising the bar, this time through expanding access for data that's available. So I wanted to next talk about a little bit about Unidata and how I intersected. Like I had said, I came here for a work tutorial, and I also attended the Reducing Time to Science workshop in 2018. And this is a picture of me talking to Kevin Tile about our HER archive. He was very interested in this data set that we were archiving. And this workshop was really, there's a lot of discussion about how do we use all this data that is being archived and made accessible now. Like the GO satellite was giving us tons of data as well. And we were getting model ensembles that we were just trying to like figure out as a community, like we've got all this data, but like we need the tooling to match the amount of data we've got and give that tooling to students and researchers so they can do something with it. So that was all really important, but something else was a turning point for me at this meeting. And it was during a break, Julian had invited me to contribute in some way. He had found that I had some Jupyter notebooks that I'd put on my webpage about downloading GOES data and plotting up just simple true color images and just doing something with the data. So he thought that was interesting, and I don't know if he remembers, but we sat at a table and he kind of was like, oh, this is what we could do. And I was like, whoa, like slow down. Like I have no idea what GitHub is. Like I've got an account and I put a few things up there. I put these notebooks up there, but like, I don't know what I'm doing here. But I think he was a little patient with me, and it took about 9 or 10 months. But here's my comment here. I had made my first pull request to the Unidata's Python gallery to contribute this notebook showing how I had made a true color image of the GOES data set. And I didn't know that people would be interested in that, but people were. And really, this was a turning point for me because that invitation to participate kind of prompted me to learn a new skill and kind of crossing a new barrier. Like I had gotten here in sharing data, but I needed this invitation helped me get here, reach that new level. So just these invitations that you guys extend to people and to students, these really mean a lot, and they really help build people. So after my time at Utah, I got a job. I was really grateful to get a job. I started a postdoc, and I also found myself with a lot of free time on my hands due to some unplanned circumstances. So I picked up coding more as a hobby and not just as something I did at work. And I really wanted to, it's like, okay, if I'm going to be stuck at home doing things, I really want to, develop my skill set in Python development, learning to use GitHub better. And so I did that. And so in my free time, I was looking at a lot of things that existed already. MetPy I used pretty much as a template of what should a Python package look like and how to even build one. And then MetPy Mondays, those were really great videos for showing off new skills. Project Pythia, that's the reason why I use CartoPy today, is because they have a notebook on how to use it. And then just like many other resources that exist out there, teaching how to use GitHub and Python packaging, and throughout this the pandemic, I was able to publish successfully my very first Python package on PyPI, and I was very proud of myself. And I had taken that code that I wrote in grad school and developed my Python skills and made it that was something usable by other people. And I released it as a package called HERB, and the B was for Brian, So, and her is because it was accessing her data, this data set that I had been using in all through grad school. And I kept going with it. I was kind of addicted to, GitHub and figuring out how to pull requests to my own thing, my own repos. And so that was, I just kept building on it, and I needed to rebrand it because it wasn't just dealing with the her data. I started to make people be able to download GFS data and IFS and the NAM and RAP, you name it. If it's in grid format, Herbie could be made to download it. And so I'm still shocked that people have paid any attention to this Python package that I made mostly as a hobby to expand and develop my skills. But I've continued to develop those skills because people have contributed to it, and I've learned how to interact with other people in the field that wanted to say, it's like, hey, I use this. I want to do something to make it a little bit better. And so there's, right now there's 29 contributors, and I'm really grateful for anybody that has done that. And because you've not just made Herbie a better tool for people, but you've helped me be a better Python programmer too, and better contributor to the community. So I just wanted to put this another bumper sticker here for the training and examples that are provided by you guys and by other means. Like this is really an important method of raising the bar for our community and teaching people how to do things. Because if what we know gets lost or isn't passed down, we won't see new and shiny tools and new knowledge being shared and expanded on. So I've kind of talked about Herbie a little bit now, that assuming everybody's knows what it is. I know we read about it, but I really still don't know who uses it, except for when people come and tell me at a conference or when they email me. But I know some of you have used it here. Other people probably haven't. So I wanted to just explain what Herbie is by explaining the problem that it solves and why I think people like it. So we've got this, we've got a lot of data that exists out there in the world, and there's been a lot of great effort in making it accessible. We've got the NOAA's Big Data Program, and there's other initiatives too that exist, and that people are publishing their data and making it accessible. And at the same time that's been happening, we've seen a really strong maturing landscape in the tools that can use that data really effectively. We've got, pandas, matplotlib, metpy, Dask, polars is my current favorite. But developers raise the bar by just making and expanding tools and tool sets that do really great things with the data. But there still exists this access gap of, you got a tool that I want to process my data with. I've got data that I don't know where it is. I know it exists somewhere. And I like to, you can spend a lot of time tracking down URLs and trying to make sense of them. That was a lot of the work into developing Herbie was I know that the URL exists, but it takes a lot of time to really understand it. And I like to tell people that URLs are not intended for human consumption, because to me, they just look like this. Blah, 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 s3 something.com.grib, that's where your file is. Okay, well, I don't know where that is. So you need something else to kind of bridge that gap. And Herbie fills this gap for numerical weather data. And I hope you can agree that this single line is a lot more user-friendly than trying to parse a URL yourself. If you're new to numerical weather prediction and you want some weather forecast grids, all you need to know is that a model exists and it is called the HER. You don't have to know what the acronym stands for, but you just need to know the date and maybe a forecast time, and Herbie knows the URL for it. And it's pretty simple, but it just takes that input and turns it into a URL and knows where to find it. And that data could be located anywhere or in multiple different places. And this isn't like a complex concept. There's a lot of different tooling that does this, that acts as a bridge. And I think that the existence of this tools kind of points to us and saying, hey, we need to not just make our data accessible. We don't just need to focus on tools to process data in large batches, but we really need a bridge to help users discover and access those tools and dump them into what they should be using to process it. So Herbie, it can download a file for you, but it can also help you open it in X-ray. Kind of does some of the CF Grib stuff for you in the back end. And I think that has made it usable and friendly for people to use. But really the goal here with these kind of bridge packages or bridge tools is to help a scientist or anybody spend less time with that data discovery and data wrangling and just get straight to the point and just start working with the data that you want. So one of the most important features of Herbie is its ability to subset parts of a Grib file, and other tools that interact with Grib, they take advantage of this feature too. And this is something that Chris Galley in the MesoS group taught me when I was first working with the Data, but he told me that a Grib file is pretty much just a stack of lots of small Grib files on top of each other. And once you know that, and once you know that there's a byte range for each of these little Grib files, you can download, pull out just one of those pancakes out of this stack of pancakes. And then this, as a user, you're not downloading an entire stack when you're like, I'm not that hungry. I just need a single field. And there's other formats like ZAR that lets you do this too, but Grib, that's the way that right now a lot of our model data is archived in this format. So it's really good to know that this feature exists, and Herbie kind of takes advantage of this. And I really hope that my documentation I wrote kind of makes it clear on how to actually do that. Because you got to write a regular expression to sort through some index list. But with a lot of examples, I think that people have kind of caught on how to actually do this and pull out those pancakes that people want. And I use Herbie in my work, and other people do too, that I've seen them use it for different things. So really recently, I was working on something. I just needed to know what the winds were doing at the poles for a period of interest that I was looking at, and I was like, well, I was like, oh, there's this package Herbie. Oh yeah, I wrote it. But this is going to make it really easy. I don't have to try to figure out where to get the ECMWF IFS forecast. I can just say, Herbie, I just want this date. I want the analysis data. Here's a few fields I need to pull. Then I got a function to make a graph out of it. And within a few lines of code, I was able to really get to the point of what I wanted. I needed a customized map of information from this data archive that exists. And I think the simplicity and the ease of this is kind of what has made it popular among people to use it. I've seen it used in a number of AMS journals. People are very kind to make an acknowledgement for a tool they use to download data when really their whole research project is not related to the data at all. But they used it to verify some stuff. But people are very nice to make citations, and I'm really grateful for that. But one of the things I'm really proud of is that how Herbie has helped people outside of meteorology. So this is one example. This is a guy that I've met. His name's William Hobbs. He's an engineer at a utility provider in the Southeast called the Southern Company, and he's become a regular user and contributor of Herbie. William, he built this probabilistic solar forecasting tool so that they can, with their solar farms, they can predict, solar output a little bit better using input from lots of different weather fields, whether it's the HRRR or, ECMWF models or the GEFS model. And so he's got this paper about building this tool, and it's all, the weather aspect of it's all based on using Herbie to access that data. And he's kind of shared Herbie with other people in his circles he's like, hey, by the way, if you need weather data, it's really easy to get. You should be using weather data. And I really think that's the bigger picture in the work that we're involved in. So a lot of us were here because we love the weather. We probably got involved in that. The real impact, though, in our work is when our work supports other people in other fields. And that's where the impact really happens. It's not so much in did we forecast things right, but it's did somebody make better decisions because we made forecasts right, or because we know something about the Earth system better. And that's where the impact really lands. It's for how it affects people downstream of meteorology. So in developing Herbie and other tools, I've I've really seen how that's raised the bar by just having this open source attitude in our work. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Everybody here would get up here and, testify the same thing, that they know that, open source is the way to go for sciences, and it really does. But it's something that we really need to pass on to the next generation. And something that I'm really passionate about is helping other people kind of develop these skills too. I think that's kind of a natural flow of, like, when you're a student, you'll learn some things and you get some new lessons. And then when you kind of get a little bit more experience, then you see there's some more students. I'm not a student anymore. There's some people down here that are coming up. I've got a thing or two to tell them, that would really help them as they kind of grow up and grow into these new roles. So at our lab, we host about 20 interns every summer, and I like to teach a workshop at the beginning of the internship. I call it GET for those who don't get it. And I've had a lot of success in teaching them how to use GET using, the VS Code GUI. I don't know if anybody uses this here, but for me, like, I use it all the time. I don't use the command line anymore, hardly for GET stuff, because 90% of what you need to use GET for, you can just click a button and it does it. But for a new person that isn't familiar with GET, and it's kind of a foreign concept to them, being able to see how to do it and repeating that step over and over again, kind of in a workshop setting, is, I think, been useful in helping them learn those skills. And then if they want, they can do command line stuff if they really feel like they have to. But so part of that, I tell people, and I really try to nail this in their heads, that GET is really a highly desirable job skill. But it's not just GET, it's this open source attitude of documenting what you do and documenting it in an effective way that communicates with people and teaches people, like, what you did, how you did it, and why you did it. And from that, the community can build on those efforts as well. And I also tell them too, like, you probably will end up at a place like a government lab that doesn't let you actively publish stuff in the public. But you can take that same open source attitude and apply that in any kind of work. And I've seen that, benefit our lab in a lot of ways. Like, we have an internal GitHub that we use, and just having that collaborative nature between colleagues really helps our team build things out more effectively, and being able to do this work that we're involved in ways that can be carried on and built upon. So that's really my big main message, that this open source attitude is raising the bar in our sciences. It's raising the bar for us personally in all the efforts that we're involved in. I really like what Unidata does for the community. You guys really are the leaders in this space, and really grateful for what Unidata does. And people that are at the universities, you guys are teaching those new scientists that are going to be coming up and working at the places that are doing this good research. So this last part of my talk, I just want to take a few minutes and there's just a few things that are new and exciting to me. Maybe they're not exciting to you as much, but since I'm up here on the stage, I'll take my moment to, tell you what I'm looking at and what I like. First off, machine learning, this is just taking our field by storm. There's a lot of effort going into this. I think this graphic is making its rounds, but this is showing the skill in machine learning forecasting over time. This is from Stephen Rasp, and just clearly, like, the bar has been raised for us in our community with this new tool and capability to do this. There's even this new class of machine learning models that are observation driven, and I think these are also going to see some steady improvement. So I'm really excited about this, and I know that it has only been enabled because, as a community, we focused on making analysis-ready data sets and building advanced tools, all mainly built in the Python ecosystem. I think Unidata got really involved in Python early in offering training. So this is a great thing to get our community in these tools that are kind of driving these next levels for us. So I've been really involved with Herbie, it's all gridded data, but not all weather data is gridded. And a lot of our archived observations data is kind of locked up in this buffer format. And I don't know about you guys. If anybody here is a buffer expert, I would love to talk to you because I've been trying to wrap my head around it for like the last month and something else I'm involved in. But like seriously, if you know, like if you understand buffer, like I want to like figure out how to read and write it really effectively. I think it's kind of embarrassing that our community has, you know, buffer is a standard, but it's very difficult for non-meteorologists, but even meteorologists to use that data. So I've really I've been keeping an eye on like what Brightband's been doing. Like they're involved in some machine learning stuff, but something that I think that they've done really nicely is they just released like this Parquet data set of this archive of buffer data. They spent all this effort decoding buffer files and dumping it into Parquet files. And this is like, you know, just a, you know, big kind of a big milestone for what this data set, what we can even do with this. Like Parquet is, it can be, you can read Parquet with like any modern data frame library with pandas or polars. I said that was like my favorite thing to use now. And it really is. Like if you haven't used polars yet, I would really encourage you to really try it. I think we should include it in some of those tutorials. But this is just one thing I'm really excited about. It's another example of, you know, putting that data we've got locked up for ourselves and our proprietary formats. They're not really proprietary because anybody can read buffer standards, but putting it in something that anybody, like even meteorologists, can read Parquet files. So I think that's great, and it's going to open a lot of doors for us too. We're going to see more advancements in that, and we've got ZAR too, and there's a lot of efforts in that, and I'm excited about that too. The last thing I'll tell you that I'm excited about is something very basic and fundamental to learning Python. It's in Python packaging. It's always the first thing when you teach somebody Python, you have to tell them, well, you got to download Python, you got to download these dependencies so you can use them. And I think our community has been well served with using Conda and Mamba environments and still use those, but that we're seeing the bar raise again and again for even something as simple as Python packaging. And just like the last year, this tool called UV, has anybody heard of UV? Or are they using it? Okay, we got 2 people, okay. Well, if you're using Python, I would strongly encourage you to, the next thing you do when you get to your office and get on your desk, before you open your emails, you should go get UV, download it, and spend an hour and see if you love it. It didn't take me long to be like, whoa, like I resolved to create a virtual environment in like a second. So I think that is really exciting and opens the door to teaching Python to students in effective ways too that are new and exciting. So Python is, I still like Python. I started learning it almost 15 years ago, and I can summarize my excitement for Python with this picture of the SpaceX Raptor rocket engines. So each iteration it gets better and better. Now, when I was first learning Python, it was hard because, you know, installing things were difficult. And then, so that's the Python of yesterday, though. So Python of yesterday was difficult and confusing, and today it's much better, and it's getting better still. And I'm really glad to see it being really the engine for machine learning, a lot of data analysis. This is a valuable tool that we have that we're teaching our students to get involved in Python, because with that, you're introducing them to an open source community and to Unidata and all these different these things that has to offer. So just to conclude, how do we keep raising the bar as individuals and as earth scientists? Well, we're going to keep doing it by following those same tried and true principles of providing quality education and training, developing quality tools for accessing and processing data that really empowers others, and cultivating this open source attitude. And I believe Unidata leads the way in this. And I really am grateful for all of your examples and your efforts in this. And I want to thank you again for that.
We have time for some questions. If you have a question, I will pass you this fancy microphone.
Oh, I thought you were going to throw it. Oh, you are going to. Thanks so much, Brian. This was awesome. Awesome talk. Well-deserved award. I'm really interested here in your second bullet on quality training and education. And I'm curious from your experience coming, I guess one of my concerns in our field, kind of looking ahead, is the stuff you put in there towards the end about things like UV, things like Parquet files. Those are also really exciting to me. How do we bridge the gap between, I've said this to this group before, so it's like, sorry, people who know what a Parquet file is and people who don't know what a Parquet file is, because even among our younger students, they still aren't, there's a gap there, and I don't understand why that gap is there, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on bridging that gap to get to like even a basic level of how to get in the modern world.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good question, but I don't know, it's like just along the lines of like, how do you teach someone what a Parquet file is? I think the glorious thing about these modern tools is that you don't really have to know what a Parquet file is, because you just load it. And, you know, for a student, I don't think you really need to teach them like how Parquet files work, right? You don't say, oh, they got all these pages and groups and all that. It's because to a user, all you just, you know, all the student needs is like, here's your data. And the important thing to teach is, I think, these, whatever package you are teaching them to process it, whether it's pandas or polars. But I think like the lines of needing to know files and like file types is kind of like not being as important anymore, because like in pandas or polars, you can just say read CSV, read Parquet, read, you know, Excel even, and it doesn't really matter so much where the data comes from. What matters is the data frame representation and actually doing stuff with that. So and file formats are going to change too. It's like there's going to be something else in 3 years that is the right way to do things. So, so I think a lot of the effort is teaching them the like the skill for like what's the latest tooling to actually process the data, and so like if you've got, it shouldn't matter if it's a Parquet or a CVS file that you're telling your student to load in, because it should all be the same kind of data frame that they're going to read. So that's kind of like my take on file formats. So I don't know, yeah, if there's anything else about that too. But,
No,
okay.
that was great.
Okay.
Great talk. Two-part question here. So we'll start with the first part.
Okay.
If you can go back to yourself in 2011 and knowing what you know now, what would you wish you would have known then?
Let's see. I probably would have done more computer science classes for sure, because like I think this has changed. But when I was an undergrad, the only required programming class for me was a half semester in MATLAB, and that was yeah, I definitely changed in the department. I know that for a fact. But I'm sure it's changed too at your schools too. You're incorporating more programming in your classes, so that was would definitely be a thing to, you know, to do, because when it comes, at least for me, when I got my job, I'm working right now, and some of the meteorology stuff, it's great to have that knowledge, but really most of the stuff I'm doing is on a computer coding something, and so that's a lot of it. So I would definitely have spent more time trying to do more computer science things. Yeah.
Second part, magic wand. What's the one thing that, thinking about this open source community or Python community, anything like that, if you had a magic wand, what would be the one thing that you're like, boom, solved?
Solved?
Solved and changed, or, you know?
Oh, that's a good question. One thing that I would just fix for everybody, I don't know, like just because it's on my mind, but like buffer file, I would like I would go back and change the WMO standards for or at least like, you know, make some more, you know, tooling that was a little bit more seamless. I think pandas or polars should have like a read buffer that just does it magically for you. But yeah.
It's just a comment, but I believe Kelton Halpert's been doing a lot with buffer files. You might want to reach out to him.
Okay, yeah.
He's been suffering.
in suffering. So,
Well, suffering and hopefully succeed.
okay, okay,
A
yeah.
lot of comments about it.
I don't think there's a lot of like missing talent in reading butterflies. So it's very niche. So yeah.
I guess with no more questions, let's thank Brian again.
Thank you.